All right, so here we have implemented a DAO that is implementing some of the high-level CRUD operations that we want to use to interact with our database. So we're ready to start actually interacting with the database, right? We had written earlier a service that was working with quizzes, right? Let's look at that service. Here's the quizzes service. If you remember, the quizzes service was implemented some of these functions that were just using this hard-coded array, right? And so we want to replace this implementation so that instead of using this hard-coded array, it uses instead the DAO and retrieves all this data from the database instead. So let's remove this array. It was commented out, and instead we're going to bring in that DAO we just created. So we're going to do const quizzes DAO. We're going to require the DAO we just built. We're going to go up down to the DAOs down to the quizzes DAO. Once we have that, right, we're going to just write these implementations in terms of the implementations of the DAO. Dot find all quizzes, and then implement this instead of iterating over these arrays. We're going to use the DAO we just wrote. So this would be quizzes DAO dot find quiz by ID, and we're going to pass the quiz ID. There we go. Right. Excellent. So now we have rewritten, right, the implementations to, instead of using this hard-coded array, it's going to go out to the database, right? Now this fundamentally changes how we interact with the data that we're using as source, right? In that before, these implementations used to be synchronous, right? They would use the object and data that was stored in this file and retrieving it. Right now, instead, they're not returning. Right, these functions used to return actual data. Now these functions are not returning data. Instead, they are returning, the promises that are being returned by the DAOs, that are returned by the mongoose model, right? That are now being used here, right? So we need to refactor anybody who's using the service to use now this asynchronous implementation.